Scoreinc. I'm the president of Scoreinc. Joshua is not going to be able to join us today. He's busy doing other things. But I'm very interested to bring you this very important webinar. I've been researching this for some time. I'm spending a lot of time with mortgage bankers and with some regulators, and been reading over the law, or the proposed rules, I should say, as they've been coming out all year. And it looks like the rule that has been published is going to be the final rule. I'm sure there'll be some adjustments and changes as it goes into effect. There always is, but the CFPB is pretty much hell-bent on releasing this effective January the 10th. There's an aspect of it that goes into effect January the 1st related to loan originators' income and maximum income and how they get paid. So, I guess the next strategy for the CFPB may be to tell real estate agents how much they can get paid, credit repair people how much they can get paid, and maybe even football players how much they can get paid. I'm not sure. But it's a pretty interesting dynamic when, for really the first time ever, a regulator comes in and says, this is how much you can get paid for doing a loan, and this is the most you can charge for doing a loan. So it's a very encompassing document, and what's interesting about it is it's not that long, but it's very encompassing. I'd recommend that you download it. I don't have a link right off the top of my head here, but you can go to, you could Google federalregister.com and then Google 2013 mortgage rules, and that would probably be a good place to start. I'm going to go through and kind of build the case a little bit, and due to the length of time that this webinar will take, we're going to break it into several sessions. And we've got a new recording mechanism that we will make this available to you to replay several times a day, 7 days a week, as well as the follow-up sessions that will be really the most informative. So let's kind of go through this and talk about the issue. And I'm doing this, I want to do this for a couple of reasons. One is so that you grasp what's about to happen. The second is that you can begin to lay a plan for it. And third, it gives you the information that you need to go out into the marketplace and talk to the mortgage industry participants, okay? So this is a gentleman. He's Congressman Keith Rothfuss, and he's kind of speaking to the non-qualified mortgage rule versus the qualified mortgage rule. And effectively what he's saying is that, this bill is going to have the effect of drying up capital and making it more difficult to buy a home at an affordable payment instead of just having renters. Well, we'll see. I believe that that's the case as well, and it will be pretty interesting how broadly this affects the marketplace. But the thing about it is that this is a nationwide event, not a local event. So whatever's happening in your local market will either it's going to make it it's going to make it worse either way, but either the local conditions are going to keep it from being as bad, or, if it's worse already, still it could even make it more problems. This gentleman, Richard Coughlin, a CEO at a small bank, and I like to go to the small banks and hear what they're thinking, because what Chase is thinking, or what they say they're thinking, what Wells Fargo says they're thinking, they're not going to tell you the truth, I don't believe. But the guys that know their borrowers, that deal in the community and been there a long time, they're the ones that I really like to hear what they've got to say. And this gentleman says, one of the concerns others in the industry have is that there will be banks around the country that may stop lending in January, at least for a brief time, until they're 100% certain that they have the systems in place, have the proper disclosures, and are complying with the new law. Okay. Now, why is that important? Well, the new law has a provision in it that in the event that a consumer feels as though they could not actually qualify for the loan, or could not actually afford the loan and should have never been given the loan, they can actually sue the lender. Not only can they sue the lender, they can sue the servicer, they can sue the lender that originated the loan, and they can sue the loan officer. Okay, so the future becomes very uncertain for the servicer, the originator, as well as the loan originator and the lender, the mortgage company that was there that originated the loan. And so, you know, can you imagine that, right? So you kind of go back and see the seeds of this back in the 2000s when, of course, people were given loans that they could never afford. And that was wrong. But, you know, what's happening here is they're, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as we would say. Most of the things that the QM was put in place to correct has really already been corrected in the marketplace. The marketplace usually takes care of itself. And in this case, it's already done that, and the qualified mortgage rule is really unnecessary, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's as well. So let's go through the primary requirements to determine ability to repay, which is known as the qualified mortgage. Some other, another way to say it is qualified mortgage rule, but you'll find most of the mortgage originators talking about QM, okay? So kind of get that as a buzzword. So QM is your word. Now, and as you see this, if you're from the mortgage industry, you're going to go, well, heck, that's the same guidelines as we've got right now. Current or reasonable ability, expected income and assets. You know, if you've got if you've been on the job a couple of years, there's a good chance that your income's going to continue. If you've got the cash in the bank, reserves, pretty good chance that that's going to continue. Okay. Current employment status. Have you been on the job a couple of years? If you've been a nurse for a dozen years and you've changed jobs, that's okay too. As an example, if you've been a welder for many years and you've changed jobs, that's okay too. But, you know, so that's the same as we've always had. The monthly payment of the transaction, the monthly mortgage payment of the transaction, the monthly mortgage payment of any seconds, if there were any seconds, and then the total mortgage-related obligations altogether. And again, that's an aspect of the front-end ratio. Okay, you always had a front-end ratio, and it becomes an aspect of the back-end ratio, current debt, alimony, child support totals. Now, this is a really big change here. If, you know, you guys out there have been in the mortgage space, you know that there's really, there has always been some back-end and front-end DTI factors, but they've never been written in stone. So you got a guy, you know, so you got common sense underwriting. You got a guy that's buying a $100,000 house. He's got $30,000 in cash, okay, to put down on the house. He's got whatever, but he's got a low income because he is retired. So in the past, that loan originator, that underwriter had the liberty to go above 43%. In cases like that, other cases, you got a guy that's starting out, he's got a high 50% back ratio, but you know he's got a house for sale, and the house is going to sell because it's priced right, and it's going to drop his debt-to-income cost $1,000 a month, and so they go ahead and do a 50% back-end DTI ratio, or 43, or 45, or 48, okay? The government is taking away the ability for a lender to have that flexibility, okay? So this is one of the really big factors of what's going to materially change the marketplace in the short run. So this is the second. The big one is it a qualified mortgage? Am I afraid that my systems aren't in place yet to run my company correctly, where I'm only issuing qualified mortgages? Because only qualified mortgages can be sold into the secondary market, whether Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or FHA. And so since that's, you know, really, I'm not sure the exact factor at this moment, but it's probably up to 80, 85%, which is historically extremely high, and you know you can't sell that loan, then you're going to think twice about approving the loan, okay? If, in fact, it turns out not to be a qualified mortgage, and the CFPB says, oh, we know there are going to be some mistakes made, okay? but that bank, in good faith, made that file, made that loan. They've documented their file. It's a good loan. We're not going to penalize the bank, the lender, but it doesn't stop. Once the loan's qualified as non-QM, it doesn't stop the consumer for suing the mortgage participants when and if they ever become unable to pay for the loan. Now, every aspect of that seems to be a little unclear to everybody that I talk to. That, well, when can they sue it? What happens during the foreclosure? It's really unclear at this time. And what happens when business people are unclear? They become very, very conservative, at least for a while. The third aspect of it is that the loans that are not QM can't be sold in the marketplace, and thus banks, we're going to get to this in just a second, banks are going to have to really be very cautious about the loans that they put in their portfolio, because, as you know, banks only like to put in loans in their portfolio that have a 5-year balloon. Well, the QM, and I didn't have a slide for this, the QM says that only loans in rural areas, and they define rural areas, can have a balloon. No other loan can have a balloon. So banks, if a loan's not a QM, and they would say, well, I'll hold it in my portfolio, but then they can't have a 5-year balloon on it, and at the current rates is 4.5%, they can't make any money on it with the capital requirements, the new additional capital requirements that have been put on them. Then, as you can see from all of that, it becomes very tenuous as to, what a bank's going to want to do and not going to want to do, especially in the short run, which is always the problem. We're always worried about tomorrow. Usually after a week or 2 or 3 or a month, or a year, sometimes things begin to settle out. But I'm worried about some of the initial phases of this. Now, the real kicker is that they've added credit history, which has always been a part of the mortgage approval process, of course, but there's never been this element where it's effectively, in order to have a QM, the credit history has to meet the guidelines of the QM, which, guess what? They don't give you any. So if the lender thinks, based on the Fannie Mae guidelines, so they go by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, which are really the same as they've always been. Really nothing materially changes. If the underwriter has a great deal of leeway, but in this marketplace, they're not taking any leeway whatsoever. I was at a mortgage company a month or so ago. They had a VA loan. Everything about the VA loan was perfect, except for the fact that the guy had somehow, the bankruptcy had been removed from his credit report. Yet, there were still items on the credit report that said included in bankruptcy. So the VA loan lender, the underwriter, would not let the loan go through until the bankruptcy was placed back on the credit report, because they didn't know what the effect of the FICO score was on the bankruptcy. Now, I can tell you right now, if you're a credit repair company, and I know you are, and you do petition the bureaus to remove a bankruptcy, you better damn sure make sure that that borrower understands that they better fill out that mortgage application and check the box, yes, I filed bankruptcy in the last 7 years, or otherwise they're committing mortgage fraud. Okay, the mortgage company will know through other sources other than the credit report that there was a bankruptcy. So you're not going to get past the fact there was a bankruptcy. And if it's not on the credit report, in this instance, the lender wouldn't let it go through because they didn't know the effect that the bankruptcy would have on the credit score, other than, of course, they knew it would go down. And if it was not above the minimum, they wouldn't want to do the loan. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to show you what really gets kind of scary are the next couple of slides. Okay, we've covered that just a moment ago. All right, so I want to ask some questions, and if you want to use the chat system to answer the question, but what percentage of loans had a DTI in excess of 43% in 2003? Anybody want to proffer a guess? And I'll wait for you, because I want to make this a little interactive here and get some feedback, because I really want, it's always great to have a class like that. So what percentage of loans had a DTI in excess of 43% in 2003? Said another way, what percentage of loans did the underwriter let go through that had a higher ratio? Okay, so I'm getting numbers all over the board. Good, come on, let them come in. We'll see how much you guys know about the mortgage space. I told Joshua the other day he didn't know anything about the mortgage space. I was just kidding with him though.
Yeah, but I took it personally.
I know you did. There you are. I see you came in. So nobody else on the call does it either, because I'm getting numbers all the way from 43 to 75%. So the answer is it was only 18 to 22%. So you can see that the lenders have been very tight in who gets a loan. Now, if you go back to, I'd say 05 or 06, I'd say the number was probably 30 or 40%. The number of what's called exceptions to lending guidelines is what really caused the securitization of mortgage-backed securities to have such a problem, because the bundles, they call them, were filled with exceptions. And let's talk about that just for a second. You've got 1,000 loans in a pool. In the pool, the description of the pool says that 99% of these loans meet these criteria, when in fact, and I'm just going to pick a number and think I'm pretty accurate, 70% met the criteria. Okay, well, that changes the value of the pool, right? Let's say, I watched this, one time I watched this show that they go and bid on what's in a mini warehouse, right? And so you bid, you look at the box, you kind of lift up the box, you shake the box and say, that may be worth $100. Well, because of the weight, well, it ends up being some bricks in there, right, versus a bunch of gold. It's two different things. And that's what really happened to the mortgage industry, because they were able to lie to the investors and get them to buy AAA-rated securities that had a bunch of exceptions in it. So this is evidence. And the next time I give this presentation, I'm going to know the answer to this question, but I really would like to see the level of how much this number would have gone up since back in 05, and I bet it would have gone way up. So they've been doing a real good job. But, see, this is where the number really changes. So the next question is, and just because you didn't get the first one right doesn't mean you can't answer the second one. What percentage of sellers purchase another home? Because that's where the factor really, really is going to impact the mortgage industry. Because if there's a hard line on the 43% and the consumer cannot get a loan if they're over 43%, there's 20% of the marketplace going to be immediately impacted by this change. Okay, nobody's answering the question, so I'm going to have to wait till you answer the question. What percentage of sellers that, so you help a guy get his credit improved, and he goes out and buys a house. And of course, if he buys a new house, then this doesn't apply. But if he goes and buys an existing house, what percentage of those sellers go buy another house? Okay, and this is where the mortgage market really missed it, or the political market really missed it when they ended down payment assistance so abruptly, and that was because of this factor alone shoved the market into recession. And the answer is historically it's about 80%. So a couple of you guys got pretty close. So about 80% of the sellers buy another home. Now, if you factor that out, Joshua, you're the mathematician. What's that turn into, right? About 5 more houses.
Yeah, that's a big number. I got to understand this because, I'm not a mortgage guy, so. I want to understand this. 18 to 22% of loans had were in excess of 43%. That had a DTI in excess of 43%. And of those loans, of that 18 to 22%, 80% of those sellers bought one or more additional homes other than new home purchases. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah, they'd have bought one more house. So, yes, that's the answer. That ends up being the problem, right? Sure.
Yeah. Big problem.
Yeah, so, right. For example, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, there's 150 houses a month sell, okay? So let's just take that number and say that 20% of those couldn't sell because of the new rule. And the 80%, we always said you multiply it times 5 because it's a 5-time multiple. Well, I'm not very good at math, so I think that's probably right. So that's that's a push down factor of about 150. Now, of course, that can't be right because there was only 150 ounces to sell. So I'm not sure of the exact factor that this affects, but it's magnificent. So if one guy doesn't buy, 5 guys can't buy. And that's not what it amounts to. And yeah, so it turns into an exponential number. So the answer is, how much does it affect your marketplace? And the answer is it's a gigantic effect, So and this is where I got this statistic from, is Forbes. So they're pretty accurate, So Forbes is a good, reliable resource. I had another factor of 35%, but I felt a little bit better about this one than the 35%, so I went with a lower number. Now, I want to get into the problem here. Recently, one of our customers went to Cadence Bank and said, we're in the credit repair business. You've got loan originators that deal with consumers every day that get turned down for a loan. Yes, that's right. And this guy, there's the vice president, been in the mortgage business a long time. Knew the facts, and he says, yeah, and the realtors, the problem is that the realtors send us that business, and, when we can't do the loan, they get upset with us. So as I've been writing quite a bit about referral partner defense, protecting your referral sources. Now, there's another statistic, another slide that I didn't put in this program, and that is that somehow, and that's the unknown, 25% at the high, 20% in the medium, 20% of consumers get turned down for a loan today by a mortgage company will have bought a house within 12 months. And this senior vice president knew this. He knew these statistics. He knew that his current situation in their bank were not doing enough to help consumers got turned down for a loan. So he went to the compliance department, and initially the compliance department says, yes, we want to do that because we like the idea of being able to help people beyond the rapid rescore, and that's really about all they did, rapid rescore, what if simulator, that's all they did. And within a week or two, when the meeting was scheduled, he came back and says, but now the paranoia is getting higher in the compliance department, and they do not want to refer any consumer to a credit repair company or coaching company in order to meet the ability. Now, this is the big change. In order to meet the ability to repay based on the QM for the new CFPB regulations. That's the big change in the fear of the banks. That since the QM now includes credit history as the 8th pillar of the requirement to have a QM loan, if we help that consumer raise their credit score to the point that they meet the guidelines, and fortunately, the QM does not say what the minimum credit score is, then we may have automatically created a non-QM loan. And if you go back and what the presentation, that gives the consumer the ability to sue us into the future if they can't pay for the loan. Now, and again, all the facts around that are uncertain. What does that mean? They can't get a deficiency judgment. It certainly doesn't mean that they can't foreclose. But what does it mean out there in the future? And the banks are wrestling with that today. And they will be wrestling with it until the first lawsuits come through, and it's been established by the court what exactly does it mean. Now, let me give you the next bomb here. Before I do, I want to ask you another question. I've already given the answers because, I think you guys are worn out from answering questions. Who are the top mortgage servicers? And the answer is Wells Fargo. But look, there's 7 more out there in the top 10 that they combined don't even have as much as Wells Fargo. So this next slide is going to be really something you want to pay attention to. August 2013. I've got this bulletin. I can show it to you. I can send it to you. And it effectively says, Wells Fargo will not purchase a loan if the natural score was altered between the loan original loan application and closing by using the services of a credit repair company. The consumer can use the services offered by the credit bureaus, rapid rescore programs, a nonprofit, or perform the credit repair themselves. But if they use your company, Wells Fargo says they won't purchase the loan. Now the question is, as Julie just asked, how will they know that credit repair was performed? And the answer is that I don't think they've got that in place at this time, but that, I believe, is the next step in implementing this regulation. And this is a repeat of a regulation that they've had in place. And so once it becomes a part of this QM, I think is where you really run into the problem. Another good question came in: won't purchase a loan or won't lend? Well, this bulletin was from their correspondent division. There's 3 divisions of Wells Fargo. There's the retail division, where they have retail loan officers. There's the broker division, where they table fund loans from brokers, which just about doesn't exist any longer. It's certainly a small part of their business. And then there's correspondent division, which is really most banks sell their loans to Wells Fargo. I've got 6 investment loans that are Fannie Mae, originated by 3 different mortgage companies, and they were all either sold to Wells Fargo or to Chase. Actually, on my wife's loan, just to throw this in, Wells Fargo couldn't figure out how to read our 200-something page tax return and says we didn't make enough money when, in fact, our DTI was about 6%. So we took it to a broker at Prime, let's see, what was the name of that company? Plains Capital, they go by another name. It's the Plains Capital Company. And the guy knew what he was doing, knew how to read the credit report, knew how to read the tax returns, figured out the DTI was about 8%, closed the loan in 2 weeks. Within a month, it was sold to Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo buys, as you can see from that slide, the majority of the servicing rights that are out there. Now, let's get into the meat of this. So this is the actual document: clarification, credit score reporting, rescoring, and credit repair. So the summary says, so we can get into this area right here above this red circle says, the term credit repair organization means what you're doing, okay? It means a person who uses the instrumentality of interstate commerce or the mails to sell, provide, or perform, or represent that they can sell, provide, or perform any service in return for the payment of money or other valuable consideration for the express or implied purpose of improving a consumer's credit record, credit history, credit rating, or providing advice or assistance to any consumer with regard to any activity or service described in clause number 1. That's credit repair, comes right out of CROA, okay? Now, what it does not include, and really in CROA says that you're exempt if you're a nonprofit, you're a creditor with respect to the consumer to the extent that the creditor is assisting the consumer to restructure any debt owed by the consumer to the creditor, or if you're a depository institution defined by Section 1813, which means you're a bank, an S&L credit union. Okay, so if you're not a bank, a credit union, a lender, or a nonprofit, you are a credit repair organization as covered under CROA and is covered in the meaning of this newsflash. So that says, they've highlighted this as services that meet the definition of credit repair organization in its entirety are not acceptable, they said. Services must comply with federal regulatory requirements. Now, I don't know what that means. You should throw that in there, right? So the next paragraph really gets into the nitty-gritty here. Current agency guidelines require a credit score to be based on sufficient and accurate information. Now, current agency, which agency? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You look that up. I've recently read it again, and it really gives the underwriter the flexibility to say, well, yeah, I know that's incorrect, but I mean, it's, of course, those guidelines were written a while back, probably even before rapid rescoring. So, things adjust, regulations adjust. Agency guidelines identify legitimate scenarios. Now, I was listening to Stuart Pratt's, who's the president of the CDIA, which is the Consumer Data Industry Association, which is the trade association for Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, say that credit repair companies are not legitimate, and he kind of sneered about it, okay? So agency guidelines identify, and so here's the thing about it. There is no agency guideline that identifies legitimate scenarios when corrections are made. It doesn't exist. But that's what they say here. Agency guidelines identify legitimate scenarios when corrections to a borrower's credit profile are acceptable. Public records information does not belong to the borrower. Corrections to the borrower's credit profile should be made at the credit repository level to ensure the credit score is representative of the buyer's true creditworthiness. Now, we're getting right down to the nitty-gritty of what they're concerned about, or what they've been concerned about, of course, and that is that the credit report reflects accurately the true creditworthiness of the borrower. Well, my position is that if the bureaus remove an item from the credit report and they're billion-dollar organizations, it must not have needed to be there. Okay, and at the same time, my position is if you are late on an item and you can't get the creditor to remove it, you know, you the credit repair company are doing yourself an injustice by trying to get something that's legitimate, accurate, timely removed from the credit report, and you're putting yourself in jeopardy, and you're putting the industry in jeopardy as well, as we can see from this document. Now, let's go to the next page here, and it kind of breaks it down.
So,
yes.
I'd like to add something to that. When we say something should, like that example you said with the late payment, it's actually trying to dispute something and then continuing to say it doesn't belong to me, or it's paid as agreed. But the law is clear. If there's something that's wrong, it needs to be correct. Has nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong or should be there. If it's incorrect and you're asking the creditor to correct it via the credit reporting agency, you're asking the creditor themselves to correct it directly. If they don't get it done and it's removed, that is not what this is addressing. It's addressing issues as to asking for things to be removed that that you know shouldn't be there.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So let's deal with some of the eligible scenarios that they're talking about here. So and I tried to highlight this, and I'm not as good at making slides as I need to be, so I apologize. So starting in that top left-hand corner, if inaccurate credit obtained at application and let me restate that. If inaccurate credit obtained at application and that credit results in disqualifying the borrower from loan eligibility under underwriting guidelines not met, and the inaccurate credit is corrected using credit rescoring services so that the borrower meets loan eligibility criteria, the loan is eligible to be purchased. So they are admitting that there are instances that the credit report is inaccurate, Joshua. And they're saying if you use the industry's product, which is credit rescoring, and it increases the credit score because there were inaccurate information there, that's fine. The loan will be eligible. The next box says if inaccurate credit...
Or the consumer performs his own credit repair.
There's another area there that says that. This little box doesn't, but there's another area that says that exactly. Inaccurate credit obtained at application, and that credit results in disqualifying the borrower from loan eligibility, and the inaccurate credit is corrected using a credit repair service, increasing the credit score so the borrower meets loan eligibility. The loan is ineligible to be purchased. The next box says accurate credit obtained at application, and that credit results in disqualifying borrower from loan eligibility. Action is taken to improve the borrower's credit record, history, or rating, regardless of the service used, without declining the application. And these actions result in increasing the loan score so that the borrower meets loan eligibility criteria. The loan is ineligible to be purchased. So, Joshua, what are these things saying to you? Can't hear Joshua, but I'll go on and answer it. What it's saying is that Wells Fargo is really laying down the law here, and I wonder how far they're going to go to implement this, and I wonder when the other banks are going to really make this statement and how far they're going to go towards implementing this. And that ends up being the real question, especially as it relates to QM. And the QM really changes the dynamics of the issue that the banks are facing. Again, let me just reiterate, if a bank refers a consumer to a credit repair agency company and the score goes up and the result is sometime in the future, which at this juncture nobody seems to really know what the statute of limitations on that will be, and the borrower defaults, they can sue the lender and they can sue the loan originator and they can even sue the servicer. And again, for what and how much, we don't really know yet, okay? Now, we can all feign and say, hey, that's unfair. Well, of course it's unfair. But, you know, what do you do about it? And that seems to be the next questions that I want to start answering. So this is the continuation of the same document. It says the natural loan score should always be used for pricing and decisioning except when inaccurate credit is identified, and that being in the event that you don't use a credit repair agency to improve the credit. They didn't say that, but that's the only thing they didn't say. So now my question is, what the hell is a natural loan score? Okay, and it's the one that the consumer has when they make pre-application. So we're in the credit repair space. I'm proud of the fact that we help consumers get an accurate credit report. I don't want a customer or consumer to get a report that they don't deserve, okay? I don't want them to have a credit score they don't deserve, because I rely on credit reports and I rely on credit scores to make my business decisions as well when I lease apartments or lease houses and my other businesses. So all I want and all the law allows me to want and to strive for is an accurate credit report. And I really want you guys to go look at your websites and listen to your pitches and listen to your staff's pitches and let me know that if the FTC was listening or the CFPB was listening or somebody else was listening, would that be what you're seeking to accomplish for a consumer? And that is that we're going to get you an accurate credit report. Well, can you get that bankruptcy off? Well, is it yours? Yeah, it's fine. Well, we might be able to get it off. We might be able to get it off. If it's reporting accurately, it's my opinion that you better leave it alone. But you can find out if it's reporting accurately, and if it's not, it needs to be corrected or it needs to be removed. We've had many, many examples of Chapter 7s still reporting after 7 years. I had many, many examples of accounts beyond the statute of limitations continuing to report. We've had many situations where a creditor with a judgment reaffirms the judgment in states that allow that. They do that in Alabama. They allow the creditor to reaffirm the judgment after the statute of limitations. But if the borrower was involved in a Chapter 7, and if that debt was covered in a Chapter 7, that's a violation of a federal judge's stay, and it's an attempt to collect the debt, and not only in violation of the statute of limitations, but in violation of the federal bankruptcy judge's orders. But we see it all the time, though. And so there's enough errors out there that we can build a heck of a business by just removing errors and inconsistencies in reports. Okay, so I really encourage you to go look at your websites, and if you're saying things that you ought not be saying, then you ought to change it.
One other thing we want to clarify, Joe, is that verification. The law is clear on what should be on the report, and it has to be correct or verifiable. That's the only
absolutely
guideline there is. Yeah. So we want when I think the idea that when we look at a credit report, when we're looking at it to only define derogatory items, I think that's the misconception. We should be custodians of the credit report and ask ourselves the question: what is obviously incorrect? What is obviously missing based on the account type? And if those two parameters or criteria are not met, what pieces of information should I verify so I can be sure that the information is correct? Okay, and that's the law. If the creditors or the credit reporting agencies do not comply with their due diligence, that's their problem. And therefore, any conservative position by any industry, mortgage or any other, that's their problem if they're sued. The law is crystal clear on this. It can't be that. It can't be if the FCRA or FACTA were to be any more intrusive on that, they would be bordering on infringing on every single legal binding agreement with every consumer and the loan company or the lender, and that's why the law was built that way.
Yeah, the law is really clear. I mean, you know, if it's not accurate or verifiable, it's got to be removed. And, you know, sticking with that in your marketing and in your approach keeps you safe. Now, Joshua, we're already at almost an hour now, so there was just no way to get into the next phase of this, and that is what the heck do we do about this? I am pretty confident that you're going to see banks and large mortgage companies absolutely tell their loan originators, if you refer somebody to a credit repair company, we're going to fire you. And you may lose your ability to pull credit at all. I looked at a product the other day, and you had to become you have to be approved by the bureaus to have it. It says at the bottom, if you are in the credit repair business, you don't qualify. And another section says, and if we ever think you're in the credit repair business, you will be banned for life from being able to pull credit. So a mortgage originator is really taking a gigantic risk in referring you business. Now realize that that's where 80% of your business, most of our business comes from. It's from mortgage people. So, but really does it come from the mortgage person, or really does it come from the epicenter of the real estate transaction in which the person who predominantly has been the person responsible for referring the consumer to you, and that's why it's the mortgage person. Is it the mortgage person because the mortgage person is typically tasked with understanding the credit where the realtor, the builder usually is not? Is it because the mortgage person is more stable than most real estate agents, and since I'm a real estate agent and a real estate broker since 1985, I can talk about us, okay? By and large, we're very independent. We're out there. We don't have a regular office hours, and we're not organized. We don't have follow-up campaigns, and most mortgage people don't either. But at least they're a little bit more reliable than the real estate agent. But in the coming months, I believe you're going to have to learn how to go get your business directly from the realtor, the builder, business owners, which is another huge opportunity, and of course consumer direct, and of course referrals from your current and past clients. And it is possible. It can be done. We know companies that are doing it, and we've got a path to take you down in the coming weeks with real significant training that leads you to be able to teach CE courses, continuing education courses in the real estate in the real estate community in your state. We've got real estate CE courses that you can, how to present them to your state to become approved, how to present your resume services to help you become qualified, show you how to do it. And Joshua, I am very excited to be ready to launch this in the coming weeks, maybe even next week. We'll let you know for sure. But in the month of December, we're going to launch the first module of this, and it's not going to be free. I want to let you know that right now. But it will be significant, and it will be a way for you to make an additional vertical that's in your business in 2014 and beyond. That gets you away from this concern that I've voiced now for about an hour. So Joshua, it's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to launching it in probably next week, but no later than the following week. So ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attendance today. I want to let you know that the next series will be about that. And now every day you can watch our webinars. This webinar will be available within a couple of days where you could register to watch it every day. All of our other webinars will be able to be watched every day as well, many times a day. So be sure to be looking for that. If you're not using Identity IQ through the MyIQReport.com website, you're really missing out on one of the best products that is out there. It's $16.95, and the best part about it is it's a great product, and it's really a superior product. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. We look forward to you connecting there with us. And, of course, the way to contact us is to go to our website. Give us a call. We've got a chat feature on there now that's new to us, but we're really excited to be able to instantly be able to communicate with you. Now, we had a couple of questions. I want to address a couple of them now. One is that somebody says, well, we just need to become a nonprofit. Well, there's a real issue with that, and that is that the IRS is about 50 steps ahead of you. If you're a nonprofit and you give away the services of doing credit repair, you'd be okay. And if you charge about 40 or 50 bucks a month, you'd be okay. And if you gave it away to the people who can't afford it, you'd be okay. But to run it as a business, they're way ahead of you on that, all the way back into the 80s with a company up in Massachusetts. They got in a world of trouble running a debt settlement company as a nonprofit, and it's just a disaster. So that's not an option. So, but good idea. Well, Joshua, it's been another great call. It's always good to communicate with our customers and those we'd like to become customers. So I want to appreciate and thank you for being on the call. Again, this webinar will be available within a couple of days where you could replay it, so welcome you to do that as well.